A werewolf shifter romance written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. Sound of wind rustling through ancient pines, a lone wolf's mournful howl echoing in the distance. Moonlight spilled through the dense canopy, dappling the forest floor in silver. His hand trembled, fingers clenching around a small, intricately carved wooden whistle shaped like a howling wolf. The wood was dark-aged. The howl faded slightly. Gabriel stood rigid, his gaze fixed on something unseen beyond the trees, his jaw tight with a mixture of fear and fierce determination. His breath misted in the cool night air. A soft, melodic humming drifted through the trees, a simple lullaby. It was bittersweet, tinged with a sadness that belied its gentle nature. Her face was partially obscured by shadow, but he saw the cascade of dark hair and a hint of luminous silver blue in her eyes as she mouthed a silent word. Elara, mouthing silently. Promise. Gabriel's hand tightened on the whistle until his knuckles were white. His amber eyes flickered, a primal gold briefly surfacing before being suppressed. Sound of a sharp crack of a twig underfoot, closer now. Gabriel whirled around, his posture shifting, becoming more predatory. He sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring slightly. Unseen eyes glinted in the darkness beyond the immediate moonlight, animalistic, intelligent, and predatory. The humming faltered, then stopped abruptly. Gabriel, whispering, strained. Elara? Silence. Only the wind through the trees. Gabriel's gaze softened momentarily, a flicker of pain replacing the aggression. He clutched the wooden whistle to his chest, his shoulders slumping slightly. The unseen eyes in the darkness remained, watching. Sound of a single tear hitting the forest floor, a soft plink against the damp earth. Close up on Gabriel's face, the haunted look already beginning to form in his eyes. Looking back, the silence after she left should have screamed the truth.
The weight of the impending full moon pressed down on Gabriel, a physical manifestation of the beast clawing at the edges of his control. It had been 5 years since Elara left. 5 years of a silence so profound it had begun to consume him from the inside out, leaving behind a hollow echo where laughter and warmth once resided. He moved through the shadowed cabin like a ghost himself, the scent of pine and the lingering ghost of her perfume the only constants in his increasingly fractured reality. Tonight, however, the familiar ache of loss was laced with a prickle of something unexpected. A scent, faint but distinct, carried on the night air, something floral and human, a stark contrast to the earthy tones of the woods. It tugged at a part of him he thought long dormant, a curiosity he hadn't felt since Elara. He dismissed it, of course. The woods were full of transient scents. It meant nothing, absolutely nothing. But then came the insistent rap on the door of the neighboring cottage, a sound so jarring in its normalcy that it sliced through the heavy silence Gabriel had cultivated. He'd seen her around, this human woman, the social worker. Mira, always flitting about, tending to the minor dramas of the other neighbors. He'd even begrudgingly acknowledged, in the dark corners of his mind, the way the moonlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair as she tended her small garden. Quietly efficient, that was her. He'd noticed, too, the slight furrow in her brow when she couldn't quite reach something on a high shelf, a small, human vulnerability that had, against his will, sparked a fleeting, almost forgotten protective instinct. He'd even considered offering help once, the word caught in his throat, a relic of a life where such neighborly gestures were commonplace. The knock came again, more insistent this time. It wasn't his door, of course. Why would it be? Humans rarely ventured near his cabin, a silent understanding having settled between him and the community. Yet, the scent grew stronger, mingling now with a faint undercurrent of something else, something small and subtly wolfish. His senses sharpened. His heart, a muscle he thought had atrophied, gave a hesitant thump. Moments later, a soft, slightly panicked voice drifted through the thin walls separating their properties. "Gabriel? Are you there? I need some help." It was Mira. Her voice held a tremor he couldn't quite decipher. Fear? Urgency. He found himself moving towards his own door, drawn by a pull he couldn't explain, a stirring of something long buried beneath layers of grief and encroaching wildness. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the latch. What could a human social worker possibly need from him? And why did that faint, wolfish scent now seem so inextricably linked to her presence? He told himself it was the moon playing tricks on his senses, the loneliness twisting his perceptions. But deep down, a primal instinct, one he hadn't felt in years, was beginning to stir, whispering a warning, a curiosity, a possibility he couldn't yet name. He had to know. He had to see. He had to understand why. Suddenly, the suffocating silence of his grief felt like it was about to be broken. He opened the door. Mira stood on her porch, bathed in the soft glow of her porch light, her auburn hair slightly disheveled. But it wasn't Mira who stole his breath. Clutched tightly in her arms, a small bundle of fur and wide, luminous silver blue eyes peered out. A tiny werewolf pup, no older than 3. And in those eyes, a chilling, undeniable echo of Elara. "Gabriel," Mira said, her voice tight with what he now recognized as a desperate plea. "This is Sophie. Her parents. There was an accident. I don't know what to do. I need help. Please." The sight of the pup, that impossible shade of blue staring back at him, sent a shockwave through Gabriel, a jolt so profound it momentarily eclipsed the encroaching moonsickness. It wasn't just the color, it was the shape, the depth, the very essence of Elara's gaze captured in miniature. He felt a phantom ache in his chest, a grief so sharp it was almost physical. "Mira," he managed, his voice rough and used. What is she?" "She's like you," Mira explained quickly, her eyes darting nervously towards the darkening woods. "A werewolf. I found her. There's no one else. You're the only one." Her voice trailed off, the unspoken plea hanging heavy in the night air. Gabriel stared at the pup, his mind reeling. A werewolf child. Here? So close. And those eyes, it couldn't be a coincidence. Elara had spoken of family, distant relatives he'd never met. Could this be? The thought was a fragile tendril of hope, quickly snuffed out by the crushing weight of his loss. "I can't," he said, the words a low growl. "I can't take her. I'm not." He couldn't finish the sentence. Not whole. Not safe. Not anymore. The beast within stirred at the scent of the pup, a confusing mix of protectiveness and a more primal, unsettling hunger. Mira's shoulders slumped, her hope visibly dimming. But she has nowhere else to go. The human shelters. She shuddered, the unspoken dangers clear in her expression. "Gabriel, please. Just for tonight. Until I can figure something out." Her eyes, a warm hazel, pleaded with him, and for the first time, he truly saw the worry etched on her face, not just for the pup, but perhaps for him too. He looked from Mira's earnest face to the small, frightened pup in her arms, those impossibly familiar eyes locking onto his. A battle raged within him, the instinct to retreat into his carefully constructed solitude warring with a nascent sense of responsibility, a flicker of something akin to recognition. He saw not just a werewolf pup, but a fragile echo of the woman he had lost. And in Mira's desperate plea, he heard a faint echo of Elara's own voice, a silent promise he had made long ago. Against his better judgment, against the primal warnings screaming in his blood, Gabriel finally nodded, the single gesture feeling like a monumental shift in the desolate landscape of his existence. "Bring her in, Mira." The relief that washed over Mira's face was palpable, a genuine smile finally breaking through her worry. As she stepped across the threshold, The faint floral scent that had first caught his attention intensified, now intertwined with the sweet, innocent scent of the pup. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of his isolated cabin, with a human woman and a werewolf child who carried the eyes of his lost love, Gabriel knew his carefully constructed silence had been irrevocably broken. The weight of the impending full moon suddenly felt different, no longer just a threat, but a catalyst for something he couldn't yet comprehend, something that felt both terrifying and, impossibly, like the faintest glimmer of hope. What he didn't know then, as Sophie whimpered softly in Mira's arms, was that the echoes of the past were about to collide with the uncertainties of the present, and the lullabies of a lost love were about to be sung anew.
Mira felt the weight of Sophie, small and fragile in her arms, a stark contrast to the imposing silence that emanated from Gabriel's cabin. His gruff invitation, a mere 2 words, held the weight of a reluctant truce. Stepping inside, the air shifted, the scent of pine and something wild, something inherently Gabriel, enveloping her. It was a scent that, inexplicably, sent a shiver down her spine, a primal recognition she couldn't quite place. The interior was dimly lit, shadows clinging to the corners, and the only real source of light seemed to be the soft glow reflecting off Sophie's wide, silver-blue eyes. Those eyes, they held a depth that belied her tender years, a knowingness that mirrored something she'd glimpsed in Gabriel's haunted gaze. Just for tonight, she murmured, more to herself than to him, the plea echoing in the sudden quiet. Gabriel simply nodded, his amber eyes fixed on Sophie, a flicker of something unreadable, perhaps recognition, perhaps pain, crossing his features. He didn't reach out, didn't offer any comfort, but his very stillness seemed to acknowledge the fragile life she held. She hasn't shifted yet, Mira explained, her voice barely above a whisper, acutely aware of the potential danger a first shift could pose, especially in unfamiliar surroundings. Her parents, they were teaching her, but the sentence hung unfinished, the raw grief of Sophie's sudden loss a palpable presence in this small space. Gabriel finally moved, his large frame unfolding from the doorway. He gestured towards a worn armchair by a cold hearth. Put her there. His voice was rough, the words clipped, yet beneath the gruffness, Mira detected a thread of something else. Not quite concern, but perhaps a reluctant acceptance of the situation. Carefully, Mira settled Sophie into the chair, the small pup curling into a tight ball, her silver-blue eyes never leaving Gabriel. There was an unspoken communication between them, a silent language that bypassed Mira's understanding. It was unsettling, yet somehow right. I don't know what to do, Mira confessed, her own weariness finally catching up to her. The past few hours had been a blur of sirens, hushed voices, and the overwhelming responsibility of this small, orphaned werewolf. She looked at Gabriel, the only anchor in this strange, unfolding reality. I've called everyone I know. There are no immediate placements, not for someone like her. The unspoken like you hung in the air. Gabriel's gaze flickered from Sophie to Mira, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something akin to understanding in his haunted eyes. They fear what they don't understand, he said, his voice low, the words carrying a weight of personal experience. The human world, it's not kind to our kind. A shiver traced its way down Mira's spine. Our kind. The casual possessiveness of the phrase sent an unexpected jolt through her. This quiet, intense man, her reclusive neighbor, was part of a world she only glimpsed in stories. And now she was standing on the precipice of that world, holding the key in her arms. So, what do we do? She asked, the question laced with a vulnerability she hadn't intended to reveal. Gabriel was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the small pup in the armchair. Sophie had begun to hum, a soft, lilting melody, a simple lullaby that seemed to fill the quiet cabin with a strange sense of peace. Mira felt a prickling behind her eyes. It was a sound so innocent, so fragile, a stark reminder of the immense loss this small creature had already endured. Then, Gabriel's head snapped up, his amber eyes locking onto Sophie. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "That song," he murmured, his voice barely audible, a ghost of a memory clinging to the words. Mira frowned. "It's just a lullaby. Her mother used to sing it to her, apparently." Gabriel's gaze intensified, his focus unwavering. "It's familiar." He stood abruptly, crossing the small space to stand before Sophie. The pup's humming faltered slightly, her silver-blue eyes widening as Gabriel loomed over her. There was a tension in the air, a silent recognition passing between them that Mira couldn't decipher. "Where did she learn that song?" Gabriel asked, his voice rough, urgent. Mira felt a knot of unease tighten in her stomach. Her mother, her name was Lyra. Lyra? Gabriel's breath hitched, the single word a strangled sound. He took a step back, his hand trembling slightly as he reached out, his fingers hovering just above Sophie's head. Her eyes, that color. He looked at Mira, his haunted amber gaze suddenly sharp, piercing. "Who was Lyra to you?" Myra's heart pounded in her chest. This wasn't just about finding a safe place for an orphaned pup. There was something more here, a connection to Gabriel's past, a thread she was only just beginning to unravel. I never met her," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Sophie's case was just assigned to me. All I know is her aunt was Elara." The air in the cabin seemed to thicken, the silence stretching, heavy with unspoken meaning. Gabriel froze, his outstretched hand suspended in midair. His amber eyes, wide with shock, locked onto Myra's. "Elara," he repeated, the name a broken echo. Her sister? The realization hit Mira with the force of a physical blow. Elara. It was a name she'd heard the other neighbors whisper, a name shrouded in a quiet sorrow whenever Gabriel was mentioned. His lost mate. And now, her sister's orphaned child sat humming her lullaby in his cabin, her eyes the same impossible silver blue. The coincidence was too profound, too impossible to ignore. "Yes," Mira confirmed, her voice trembling slightly. "Sophie, she's Elara's niece." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Sophie's soft, uncertain whimper. Gabriel stood frozen, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, shock, disbelief, a raw grief that seemed to tear through his carefully constructed walls. And in that moment, looking at the broken Alpha and the orphaned pup who carried the echoes of his past, Mira knew that this night, this unexpected encounter, was not just the beginning of a rescue mission. It was the unraveling of a long-held sorrow, the stirring of a dormant heart, and the unexpected weaving of 3 lives together by the delicate thread of a lullaby and the hauntingly familiar gaze of a child. What she couldn't yet foresee was the intricate tapestry of secrets, dangers, and a love that defied the boundaries of 2 worlds, all beginning to unfold within the dimly lit confines of that secluded cabin. The weight of the impending full moon suddenly felt less like a threat and more like a silent witness to a destiny none of them could have predicted.
The name hung in the air, Elara, a ghost given voice after 5 years of suffocating silence. Gabriel felt the breath leave his lungs as if he'd been physically struck. Elara's sister, this small, fragile pup, with eyes that mirrored the very soul he thought lost forever, was a piece of her he never knew existed. He stared at Sophie, the simple lullaby she hummed now a haunting melody of what was and what could never be again. A raw ache, sharper than the gnawing of the moon's sickness, tore through him. Her sister, he finally managed, his voice a rough rasp, the sound foreign even to his own ears. He looked at Mira, his haunted amber gaze searching hers, demanding answers to questions he hadn't even known to ask until this moment. You said lost. Elara was lost to the human world. Mira's brow furrowed, her hazel eyes filled with a mixture of concern and a dawning understanding of the depth of his pain. That's what I was told. Years ago, when Sophie's mother lost contact with her sister. There was never any confirmation, just silence. Her voice softened, laced with a gentle empathy that, against his will, began to soothe the jagged edges of his grief. Gabriel, I didn't know. He didn't blame her. How could she have known the intricate tapestry of his past, the gaping wound Elara's absence had left behind? Yet, the revelation hung heavy in the small cabin, a sudden, unexpected weight added to the already oppressive atmosphere. He looked back at Sophie, the innocent curve of her cheek, the tiny rise and fall of her chest as she drifted into a fitful sleep, the silver blue of her eyes now hidden behind delicate lids. Elara's blood ran in her veins. This small creature was a living link to the woman he loved, a woman he thought the world had stolen from him entirely. That lullaby, he murmured, his voice barely a whisper, the melody replaying in his mind, each note a painful reminder of Elara's gentle touch, her soft voice humming in the quiet moments before the moon claimed her for the night. Elara used to sing it. Always. Mira watched him, her expression a mixture of sympathy and quiet curiosity. It's a common one, I suppose, she offered tentatively. Gabriel shook his head slowly, a deep certainty settling within him. No, not like that. The way she hums it, the pauses, the slight variations in the melody, it's exactly how Elara sang it. He closed his eyes briefly, the memory so vivid it was almost tangible, the warmth of Elara's hand in his, the scent of lavender and moonlight that always clung to her. A silence fell between them, broken only by Sophie's soft, rhythmic breathing. Mira shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the unfolding revelation pressing down on them both. So, what does this mean, Gabriel? She asked, her voice hesitant. He opened his eyes, his gaze now fixed on Mira, a new intensity burning within their amber depths. It means that for 5 years, I believed Elara was gone. Lost. Dead, even. And now, her sister's child, carrying her eyes, singing her song, appears on my doorstep. It means nothing is as it seems, Mira. A shiver traced its way down Mira's spine. The air in the cabin felt charged, the unspoken questions hanging heavy between them. What had happened to Elara? Why had her sister believed her lost? And what role did this small, orphaned pup play in the unraveling of that mystery? What do you think happened to her? Mira asked, her voice barely above a whisper, drawn into the vortex of his pain and confusion. Gabriel's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching near his temple. The memories of Elara's sudden departure were a jagged landscape in his mind, a void he had tried desperately to fill with silence and solitude. There had been no body, no final goodbye, just an empty space beside him and a chilling silence that echoed in the woods. He had told himself she had been taken by the wild, a casualty of their world. But doubt had always lingered, a persistent whisper in the darkness. I don't know, he admitted, the words laced with a bitterness he couldn't suppress. She just vanished. One night, she went out under the full moon, and she never came back. The familiar ache of loss threatened to overwhelm him, but now it was intertwined with a flicker of something else, a desperate, fragile tendril of hope. Could it be possible? Could Elara still be out there? Mira watched him, her heart aching for the raw pain etched on his face. Maybe she had a reason, she offered softly, searching for words of comfort in the face of his profound grief. Gabriel scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. What reason could be strong enough to leave me? To leave her pack? To simply disappear? The question hung in the air, unanswered, a testament to the years of unanswered questions that had haunted his every waking moment. He looked back at Sophie, a new determination hardening his gaze. This small pup, this unexpected link to his past, deserved answers. And so did he. I need to know, Mira, he said, his voice low, resolute. I need to know what happened to Elara. And if Sophie is the key, then I will protect her. With everything I have. Mira met his gaze, her own resolve solidifying. She saw the raw pain in his eyes, but beneath it, she also saw a flicker of the alpha he once was, the fierce protector stirring from his long slumber. And in that moment, standing together in the dimly lit cabin, united by the silent hum of an orphaned pup and the ghost of a love lost, they formed an unspoken alliance, a commitment to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The weight of the impending full moon still loomed, but now, it felt less like a harbinger of despair and more like the turning of a page, the beginning of a journey into the shadows of the past, guided by the innocent eyes of a child and the hesitant stirring of a connection neither of them had anticipated. The silence of the past 5 years was about to be shattered, and the lullabies of a lost love were about to lead them down a path neither could have ever imagined.
Mira watched the determination settle in Gabriel's amber eyes, a stark contrast to the haunted weariness that had clung to him like a shroud. The air in the small cabin crackled with a newfound energy, a shared purpose forged in the innocent humming of a sleeping child and the echoing ghost of a love lost. Elara. The name resonated in the silence, a key unlocking a door Mira hadn't even known existed. She felt a strange pull, a sense of being drawn into Gabriel's world, a world of shadows and primal instincts, yet one now illuminated by the fragile light of hope and the unexpected warmth of connection. So she began, her voice soft, careful, not wanting to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over Sophie. Where do we even begin? The question hung in the air, vast and uncertain as the darkened woods surrounding them. Gabriel's gaze softened as he looked down at Sophie, a tenderness flickering in his eyes that Mira hadn't seen before. It was a glimpse of the man he might have been, the man Elara had loved. "We start with her," he murmured, his voice low, possessive in a way that sent an unexpected shiver down Mira's spine. Anything Sophie remembers, anything at all about her mother, about Elara, it might be the key. Days turned into a quiet routine. Mira, juggling her work, found herself drawn back to Gabriel's cabin, the pull of Sophie's innocent charm and the enigmatic presence of the Alpha next door an undeniable force. She'd bring groceries, small toys for Sophie, and a quiet companionship that seemed to ease the heavy silence that had long permeated Gabriel's life. He, in turn, remained guarded, his words often clipped, yet there were small shifts. A fleeting smile when Sophie giggled at a silly game, a gruff offer of help with a stubborn jar, a shared glance with Mira that lingered just a moment too long. Sophie, in her innocent way, became the bridge between them. She'd reach for both their hands, her small fingers entwining theirs, a silent plea for connection. And in those moments, a fragile sense of family began to form, an unexpected warmth blooming in the heart of their shared sorrow and uncertainty. One afternoon, as Sophie played with the wooden whistle Gabriel had shown her, a relic from his past with Elara, she began to hum again, the familiar lullaby weaving its melancholic magic. But then, she stopped, her brow furrowed in concentration. Auntie Elara used to sing another song, she said, her small voice serious. About the moon and shadows. Gabriel froze, his amber eyes locking onto Sophie with an intensity that made Mira's breath catch. "Do you remember any of it, little one?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. Sophie concentrated, her silver blue eyes unfocused as she searched her memory. Slowly, hesitantly, she began to sing, a few fragmented lines of a haunting melody, the words in a language Mira didn't recognize, yet the tone was undeniably ancient, powerful. Gabriel's reaction was visceral. He gasped, his hand flying to his chest as if struck. That's the Song of Shadows," he murmured, his voice filled with awe and a touch of fear. It's a very old werewolf ballad. How would Elara have known that?" Mira felt a prickle of unease. This was more than just a shared lullaby. This was delving into the deeper mysteries of Gabriel's world, a world with its own lore and secrets. "Maybe her family," she offered tentatively. Gabriel shook his head slowly. "That song, it's not widely known. Only certain bloodlines, those with a strong connection to the old ways." His gaze drifted to Sophie, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. Elara, she never spoke of such things. The fragmented song opened a new avenue of inquiry, a deeper layer to the mystery of Elara's disappearance. Gabriel, spurred by this new clue, began to speak more openly about his past with Elara, sharing small anecdotes, fragments of their life together. He spoke of their first meeting, a chance encounter under the full moon, the instant, undeniable pull between them. He spoke of their bond, a connection so profound it felt woven into the very fabric of their beings. And as he spoke, Mira saw glimpses of the man beneath the grief, a passionate, fiercely loyal soul who had loved deeply and lost profoundly. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Sophie asleep in Gabriel's lap, he shared a memory that sent a shiver down Mira's spine. "Elara had a recurring dream," he said, his voice low, the firelight casting flickering shadows across his face. A dream of a silver blue moon, and a voice whispering about a great sacrifice, and a child with eyes like the twilight. He looked down at Sophie, his gaze filled with a mixture of wonder and apprehension. She always dismissed it as just a dream. But now, the dream, the song, Sophie's very existence, they were all pieces of a puzzle Mira was only just beginning to assemble. She felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that they were treading on dangerous ground, that the truth about Elara's disappearance might be far more complex and perilous than they could imagine. "Gabriel," she began, her voice soft, her hand reaching out to touch his arm, a gesture of comfort and burgeoning connection. "Maybe we should look into Elara's family. If this song, if her knowledge of the old ways was significant." Gabriel nodded slowly, his amber eyes meeting hers, a flicker of something akin to gratitude in their depths. "I haven't spoken to her family in years. There was a falling out long before I met her. But you're right. We have to try." The decision was made. The next step was clear, yet a sense of foreboding settled over Mira. As she looked at the sleeping pup, the silver blue of her eyes now hidden, she couldn't shake the feeling that the lullabies of the past were leading them not just to answers, but perhaps also into danger. The weight of the impending full moon, though still days away, felt heavier now, pregnant with unspoken secrets and the promise of revelations that could shatter the fragile peace they had begun to build. The quest for Elara's truth was about to take them beyond the quiet confines of Gabriel's cabin, into the intricate and potentially treacherous world of werewolf lore and long-forgotten family ties. And as Mira's hand lingered on Gabriel's arm, a silent understanding passing between them, she couldn't deny the stirring of something more than just concern, a hesitant warmth that bloomed in the shared darkness, a fragile seed of hope in the face of an uncertain future.
The name Elara's family hung in the air between them, a fragile bridge spanning years of silence and a chasm of unspoken resentment. For Gabriel, the thought of reaching out to them stirred a bitter taste in his mouth, a tangled knot of old hurts and long-simmering anger. They had never truly accepted him, a lone wolf with no prestigious lineage, as Elara's mate. Their disapproval had been a constant undercurrent in their early years, a subtle yet persistent reminder that he was not deemed worthy of their precious daughter. Elara had always stood by him, her love a fierce shield against their judgment, but the strain had been undeniable. And after her disappearance, the silence from their end had been deafening, a tacit accusation that somehow he was to blame. Yet, the fragmented melody Sophie sang, the haunting words of the Song of Shadows, and the chilling resonance of Elara's recurring dream, these were threads pulling him back towards a past he'd tried to bury. For Sophie's sake, for Elara's memory, and for the fragile hope that flickered within him, he knew he had to try. "I know it's difficult," Mira said softly, her hand resting gently on his arm, her touch a grounding presence in the swirling vortex of his thoughts. "But if Elara knew that song, if her family holds the key to understanding why she left, we have to swallow our pride, Gabriel." Her hazel eyes held a quiet strength, a steadfast belief in doing what was right, even when it was hard. He looked down at her hand, the warmth seeping through his sleeve, a simple gesture of support that resonated deeper than she could possibly know. In the quiet intimacy of his cabin, with Sophie sleeping peacefully nearby, a sense of camaraderie had begun to bloom between them, an unexpected bond forged in shared vulnerability and a common purpose. "You're right," he conceded, his voice rough. "It won't be easy. They live far from here, deep in the territory of the Blackwood Pack, a place I haven't set foot in years." The name Blackwood hung heavy in the air, carrying with it the weight of tradition, power, and a long-standing disapproval. "Then we'll go together," Mira said, her voice firm, her gaze unwavering. "Sophie shouldn't be alone, and you shouldn't have to face them alone." Her offer, so freely given, surprised him. A human, willingly stepping into the heart of werewolf territory, facing the judgment of an old, powerful pack. It was an act of courage he hadn't expected. A reluctant smile touched his lips, a genuine curve that hadn't graced his face in years. "You have no idea what you're walking into, Mira." "Maybe not," she replied, her smile mirroring his. "But I know what's right. And I know that whatever happened to Elara, and whatever Sophie's connection to it, we need to find out." The journey to the Blackwood territory was fraught with a tension that went beyond the miles they covered. The deeper they ventured into the ancient woods, the more palpable the presence of other werewolves became. The subtle shift in the scent of the air, the distant howls that carried a different cadence, a sense of being watched by unseen eyes. Gabriel, his senses heightened, moved with a wary alertness, his protective instincts on high alert, not just for Sophie, who slept soundly in a carrier on Mira's back, but also for the brave human woman by his side. As they finally reached the borders of the Blackwood lands, marked by ancient, moss-covered stones etched with unfamiliar symbols, a patrol of Blackwood wolves emerged from the shadows, their eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Halt!" One of them growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the air. "State your purpose for trespassing on Blackwood territory." His gaze flickered dismissively over Mira, lingering with a possessive intensity on Sophie. Gabriel stepped forward, his own alpha aura radiating a quiet authority that even these imposing wolves couldn't ignore. "I am Gabriel," he stated, his voice firm. "I seek an audience with the elders of the Blackwood Pack. I have reason to believe they hold information regarding Elara, daughter of, the name caught in his throat, the old resentment resurfacing, of Lyra and Ronan Blackwood. A collective murmur rippled through the patrol. The name Elara, even in her absence, still carried weight within their pack. The lead wolf's eyes narrowed further, his gaze now assessing Gabriel with a grudging respect mixed with suspicion. Elara is gone, he stated flatly, the words carrying a finality that Gabriel refused to accept. What business could you possibly have with her family after all these years? Her niece, Gabriel said, gesturing towards Sophie. Her niece carries echoes of the past that demand answers. He met the lead wolf's gaze, his own unwavering. And I will have those answers, one way or another. The standoff hung in the air, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The Blackwood wolves were clearly wary, their protective instincts towards their own territory and their lost daughter warring with a grudging acknowledgement of Gabriel's alpha status and the undeniable connection to their bloodline carried by the small pup. Finally, after a long, tense silence, the lead wolf inclined his head, a reluctant concession. The elders will hear you. But tread carefully, Gabriel. Your past grievances hold no sway here. And you bring a human onto our lands. One wrong move. His gaze flickered towards Mira, a silent warning hanging in the air. As they were led deeper into the Blackwood territory, towards a sprawling, ancient den nestled amongst the oldest trees, Mira felt a knot of apprehension tighten in her stomach. The air here was different, charged with a primal energy, the weight of generations of werewolf history pressing down on them. She glanced at Gabriel, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. The journey had just begun, and the path ahead felt fraught with unseen dangers and the potential for a confrontation that could shatter the fragile hope they carried. What they didn't know was that the secrets held within the Blackwood den were far more intricate and dangerous than they could have ever imagined. And the truth about Elara's departure was about to unravel in a way that would test the very foundations of their burgeoning connection and the fragile peace they sought. The lullabies of the past were about to lead them into a storm.
The air within the Blackwood den was thick with the scent of generations, an ancient, earthy aroma that spoke of tradition and power. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls, illuminating the faces of the Blackwood elders, a formidable council of werewolves, their eyes sharp and assessing as they regarded Gabriel and the human woman who dared to stand beside him, a sleeping pup cradled in her arms. The weight of their scrutiny pressed down on Mira, a palpable force of suspicion and ingrained disapproval. So the lead elder, a formidable she-wolf with silver threaded through her dark fur, began, her voice a low, resonant rumble that echoed through the chamber. Gabriel, you return after all these years, bringing with you a human and claiming a connection to our lost Elara. Speak your purpose plainly. Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, held Mira's, a silent question hanging in the air. What is your role in this? Mira felt a nervous tremor run through her, but she stood her ground, her hand instinctively resting protectively on Sophie's carrier. She wouldn't be intimidated. Not when the truth about Elara and the well-being of this innocent child hung in the balance. Gabriel stepped forward, his own alpha presence radiating a quiet strength that met the elder's challenge. My purpose is simple, he stated, his voice clear and resolute. To understand what happened to Elara. For 5 years, I believed she was lost to the wild. But Sophie carries echoes of Elara that cannot be ignored. She sings songs Elara knew, songs not common to outsiders. And she has her eyes. He gestured towards the sleeping pup, his voice softening slightly. Another elder, a wizened male with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of werewolf lore, leaned forward, his gaze intent. The Song of Shadows? That is not a melody sung lightly. How did Elara come to know it? Mira watched Gabriel, his jaw tight, the old resentment towards this pack simmering beneath the surface. She never said, he admitted, his voice grudging. She never spoke of the old ways, of traditions like that. Perhaps she kept secrets, the lead elder suggested, her tone sharp. Secrets from an outsider. The word outsider hung in the air, a pointed reminder of Gabriel's lack of Blackwood lineage. Elara and I had no secrets, Gabriel countered, his voice low with a possessive certainty that resonated through Mira. Their bond, even in her absence, was clearly a force to be reckoned with. Yet she is gone, another elder interjected, his voice laced with a grief that, even after 5 years, still felt raw. And you return with her kin, demanding answers. The accusation was clear. Mira felt a surge of protectiveness towards Gabriel. They were judging him, blaming him for a loss that had clearly shattered him. He's not demanding, she interjected, her voice firm, meeting the elder's gaze. He's searching for the truth. Just as you are. A ripple of surprise went through the council. A human, daring to speak so plainly to the Blackwood elders. The lead elder's sharp gaze turned to Mira, assessing her with a newfound interest. And why are you here, human? What is your stake in this? Before Mira could answer, Gabriel stepped closer to her, a subtle possessive gesture that sent a strange warmth through her. Mira is helping me, he stated, his voice protective. She cares for Sophie. The elders exchanged knowing glances, a silent communication passing between them that Mira couldn't decipher. The air thickened with unspoken history and veiled suspicions. Sophie also spoke of a dream, Gabriel continued, his focus returning to the elders. A dream Elara had, of a silver blue moon, a sacrifice, and a child with eyes like twilight. He watched their reactions closely, searching for any flicker of recognition. The wizened elder's eyes widened slightly. The prophecy of the twin moons, he murmured, his voice barely audible. An old legend, said to foretell a time of great upheaval, a sacrifice needed to restore balance. A chill ran down Mira's spine. This was no longer just about a missing werewolf. They had stumbled into something ancient, something significant. What sacrifice? Gabriel pressed, his voice urgent. What balance? The lead elder's gaze turned to Sophie, a look of profound sadness and dawning understanding in her eyes. The prophecy spoke of a life given for the survival of many. A life with eyes that held the light of both worlds. Mira's heart pounded in her chest. Sophie's silver blue eyes. Elara's dream. It was all beginning to connect, forming a terrifying picture. Are you saying? Elara sacrificed herself. Gabriel's voice was a strangled whisper, the hope that had flickered within him threatening to be extinguished by this devastating revelation. The elders remained silent for a long moment, the weight of their unspoken knowledge pressing down on them all. Finally, the lead elder spoke, her voice heavy with sorrow. Elara discovered the truth of the prophecy. A darkness was rising, threatening our world. The only way to stop it was the sacrifice of one with the blood of both realms, blessed by the twin moons. But why didn't she tell me? Gabriel's voice was raw with pain, the betrayal cutting deeper than any physical wound. Because, the wizened elder said, his gaze meeting Gabriel's with a profound sadness. The prophecy also foretold that the one who loved her most would try to stop her, to protect her. Her sacrifice had to be freely given, without interference. Mira watched Gabriel, his face a mask of anguish. The silence in the den was broken only by his ragged breathing and Sophie's soft whimpers in her sleep. The weight of Elara's love, her sacrifice, and her deliberate silence hung heavy in the air, a crushing burden for the Alpha who had loved her so fiercely. And as Mira looked at the sleeping pup, the innocent vessel of a tragic destiny, she knew that their journey had just taken a dark and perilous turn. The truth they had sought was far more devastating than they could have ever imagined, and the lullabies of the past now echoed with the haunting melody of a sacrifice made for a future none of them could foresee. The fragile hope that had begun to bloom was now overshadowed by the chilling reality of Elara's fate, and the question that lingered in the air was whether their newfound connection could withstand the weight of such a profound and heartbreaking truth.
The air in the ancient Blackwood den hung thick with the weight of Elara's sacrifice, a silent testament to a love so profound it had demanded the ultimate surrender. Gabriel stood as if carved from stone, the raw agony etched on his face a mirror to the gaping wound in his soul. The prophecy, the deliberate silence, the agonizing truth of her final act. It was a burden almost too heavy to bear. Mira watched him, her heart aching with a fierce empathy, a deep connection forged in the crucible of his grief, and the shared responsibility for the sleeping pup who unknowingly carried the weight of a world's salvation. "Gabriel," she began softly, her voice barely a whisper in the echoing chamber, her hand reaching out instinctively to touch his arm, seeking to offer some small measure of comfort in the face of such immense pain. He flinched at her touch, not in anger, but in a raw, exposed vulnerability that made her breath catch. He turned away, his amber eyes, usually so vibrant, now clouded with a desolate sorrow. "Why?" he rasped, the single word torn from the depths of his being. "Why didn't she tell me? Didn't she trust me enough to understand?" The lead elder, her silvered fur gleaming in the torchlight, stepped forward, her gaze filled with a sorrow that mirrored his own. "She did trust you, Gabriel. More than words can say. But the prophecy, it was absolute. Any attempt to dissuade her, any hesitation, would have broken the balance, unleashed the darkness she fought so valiantly to contain." Mira watched the internal battle raging within Gabriel, the fierce Alpha grappling with the devastating truth of his mate's final act. He had loved her with a primal intensity, a bond that transcended words, and the realization that she had faced such a monumental decision alone, without his knowledge or support, was a fresh wound upon his already scarred heart. "But, Sophie," Gabriel finally choked out, turning back to the sleeping pup. "The prophecy, a life with eyes that held the light of both worlds. That's her, isn't it? Does that mean she's in danger?" The wizened elder nodded slowly, his ancient eyes filled with a profound sadness. "The darkness stirs again, Gabriel. Elara's sacrifice bought us time, but the balance is fragile. Sophie, she is the key, the one who can ultimately restore harmony, but also the one the darkness will seek to extinguish." A protective growl rumbled deep in Gabriel's chest, his alpha instincts surging to the forefront. His gaze, no longer clouded with grief, now burned with a fierce determination. "Then I will protect her," he vowed, his voice a low, unwavering promise. "With my life." Mira felt a surge of fierce protectiveness rise within her as well. This small, innocent creature, who had unknowingly become the catalyst for so much, deserved to be safe, to be loved. And she would stand beside Gabriel, whatever the cost. "We'll protect her," Mira affirmed, her voice strong and clear, meeting Gabriel's gaze with a resolute determination. "Both of us." A flicker of something akin to surprise, and perhaps even gratitude, crossed Gabriel's face. He looked at Mira, truly saw her, not just as the human who had brought Sophie, but as a steadfast ally, a source of unexpected strength in his darkest hour. Their shared concern for Sophie, the unspoken bond that had been growing between them, now solidified into a united front against an unknown threat. The path ahead will be dangerous, Gabriel, the lead elder cautioned. The darkness has many forms, many allies. Protecting Sophie will not be easy. Then we will face it together, Gabriel declared, his hand finding Mira's, his grip firm and reassuring. The simple touch sent a jolt of unexpected warmth through Mira, a tangible connection that transcended their different worlds. The elders exchanged knowing glances, a subtle shift in their demeanor. They saw not just a grieving alpha and a determined human, but a burgeoning bond forged in adversity, a potential strength that might be crucial in the battles to come. There are those who knew Elara's sacrifice, the wizened elder said, his voice softer now. Allies who may offer guidance and protection. We will help you find them. Over the next few hours, the Blackwood elders shared fragmented pieces of the puzzle, whispered warnings of a growing shadow, cryptic clues about hidden sanctuaries, and the names of ancient bloodlines sworn to protect those touched by the prophecy. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Gabriel and Mira, the idyllic quiet of their neighboring homes now a distant memory, replaced by the looming threat of a darkness that could consume them all. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in hues of fragile hope, Gabriel and Mira prepared to leave the Blackwood den, Sophie nestled safely between them. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril, but they faced it together, their hands clasped tightly, an unspoken promise passing between them. The devastating truth of Elara's sacrifice had forged a new kind of bond, a deep emotional connection rooted in shared grief and a fierce determination to protect the innocent life entrusted to their care. The lullabies of the past had led them to a crossroads, and the path they chose to walk together was one paved with both danger and the undeniable stirring of a love that defied the boundaries of loss and the shadows of an ancient prophecy. The weight of the world rested on their shoulders, and as they stepped out into the pale morning light, they knew their lives would never be the same. The fight for Sophie's future, and perhaps their own, had just begun.
The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of soft rose and gentle gold, a stark contrast to the shadows that had clung to Gabriel's cabin for so long. Mira stirred in his arms, the warmth of his body a comforting anchor in the quiet stillness of the morning. Sophie slept soundly between them, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm, a tangible symbol of the fragile family they had become. The weight of the prophecy, the sacrifice of Elara, the battles they had faced, they were scars that marked their journey, but they were also testaments to the enduring power of love and the unbreakable bonds they had forged. Morning, Gabriel murmured, his voice still rough with sleep, his amber eyes filled with a tenderness that mirrored the dawn. He brushed a stray strand of auburn hair from Mira's cheek, his touch gentle, possessive in a way that still made her heart flutter. Mira smiled, a genuine, radiant curve of her lips that chased away the last vestiges of the night. Morning, she echoed, her voice soft, laced with a contentment she hadn't thought possible just weeks ago. Did you sleep? A low chuckle rumbled in his chest. Better than I have in 5 years. Knowing you're here, knowing Sophie is safe. He trailed off, his gaze drifting to the sleeping pup, a profound love evident in his eyes. You both brought a light back into my world, Mira. A light I thought was gone forever. She reached up, her hand finding his, her fingers intertwining with his larger ones. We belong here, Gabriel. All 3 of us. The simplicity of the statement held a profound truth, a sense of belonging she had never truly felt until now. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the chirping of birds outside the window. Then Sophie stirred, her silver blue eyes blinking open, a sleepy smile gracing her lips as she saw them both. "Mama? Papa?" The innocent endearments, offered without a hint of self-consciousness, filled the small cabin with a warmth that transcended the physical. Gabriel's arm tightened around Mira, a possessive gesture that spoke volumes. "Good morning, little one," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Did you sleep well?" Sophie nodded, snuggling closer to Mira. "I dreamed of Auntie Elara," she said softly, her innocent words sending a familiar pang through Gabriel's heart, a bittersweet reminder of the love that had paved their way. Mira held her close. "What did you dream, sweetheart?" She was singing, Sophie replied, her voice dreamy. "The moon song," and she smiled. She said, "Take care of him, little star." A wave of emotion washed over Gabriel, a profound sense of peace settling within him. Elara's blessing, carried on the innocent lips of her niece. He looked at Mira, his eyes filled with a love that transcended grief, a love that embraced the future. Later that morning, as they sat by the small stream behind the cabin, Sophie splashing happily at the water's edge, Gabriel turned to Mira, a serious expression on his face. "There's something I want to show you," he said, his voice low, his amber eyes holding a depth of emotion that made her breath catch. He led her through the woods, deeper than she had ventured before, to a hidden clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. In the center stood a small, ancient oak, its branches reaching towards the sky like gnarled fingers. At its base, nestled amongst wildflowers, was a simple stone marker, intricately carved with werewolf symbols and two names intertwined, Elara and Gabriel. "I never had the heart to come here after she left," Gabriel confessed, his voice raw with a vulnerability that laid bare his soul. It felt final, like acknowledging that she was truly gone. Mira stepped closer, her hand gently tracing the carved letters of Elara's name. "But she's not truly gone, is she?" she murmured, her gaze meeting his. "She lives on in Sophie, and in the love you carry for her." Gabriel nodded slowly, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "And now there's you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You came into my life like a miracle, Mira. You brought light and laughter and a love I never thought I'd find again. You and Sophie, you've healed me in ways I never thought possible." He took her hands in his grip firm but gentle. "Mira," he began, his voice filled with a love that resonated deep within her soul. "I know our beginnings were unconventional, born from grief and necessity. But what I feel for you, it's real. It's deep. It's everything." He paused, his gaze searching hers, his heart laid bare. Will you be my mate, Mira? Will you be my partner, my life, my everything under the moon and beyond?" Tears streamed down Mira's face, a mixture of overwhelming joy and a profound sense of destiny fulfilled. She had come to this secluded corner of the world seeking to help, and she had found a love that transcended the boundaries of human and werewolf, a love that had blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances. "Yes, Gabriel," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He pulled her close, his embrace fierce and possessive, a primal claiming that sent a shiver of pure joy down her spine. Their lips met in a kiss that spoke of shared sorrow, enduring hope, and a love that had defied the darkness and emerged into the light. As they held each other, Sophie ran towards them, her small arms wrapping around their legs, her silver blue eyes shining with innocent happiness. They were a family, bound by love, loss, and the unbreakable thread of destiny. That evening, under the silvery glow of the full moon, Gabriel took Mira to another hidden clearing, a place bathed in an ethereal light. He shifted into his magnificent white wolf form, and for the first time, Mira felt no fear, only awe and a profound sense of belonging. He nudged her gently, inviting her closer, and she rested her hand on his warm fur, the primal connection between them undeniable. Then, Sophie began to howl, a pure, joyful sound that echoed through the forest, a melody of hope and new beginnings. And as Gabriel joined her, his own powerful howl resonating with love and belonging, Mira knew that their unconventional family, born from sorrow and guided by the lullabies of the past, had finally found their happily ever after. A love that would endure under the watchful gaze of the moon, forever bound by the silver threads of destiny. Epilogue. The air hummed with the gentle symphony of crickets, a soft breeze whispering secrets through the leaves of the ancient trees surrounding the peaceful meadow. Gabriel and Mira sat nestled together on a thick-woven blanket, their gazes soft as they watched several small werewolf pups tumble and play under the watchful eyes of a few trusted pack members. Among them, a year older and brimming with mischief, was Sophie, her silver blue eyes sparkling with pure joy as she chased after the flickering lights of fireflies. Mira's belly was now a gentle, rounded curve beneath her hand, a visible promise of the new life growing within her. "They grow so fast, don't they?" Mira murmured, leaning contentedly against Gabriel's solid warmth. "It feels like only yesterday Sophie was this tiny, frightened thing, clutching my hand so tightly." Gabriel's arm tightened around her, a deep contentment radiating from him. "And now she's running circles around the future alphas," he chuckled softly, his amber eyes filled with pride. "You've brought so much life back to this pack, Mira." "To me. A light I thought had been extinguished forever." Mira turned her head, pressing a gentle kiss to his jaw. "We did it together, my love." And soon, her hand drifted to rest on her swollen belly, a tender smile gracing her lips. "There will be another little one joining our happy chaos." Gabriel leaned down, his lips brushing against hers in a sweet, lingering kiss. "Our little star," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Elara would have loved them all fiercely. Just then, Sophie came bounding towards them, her small face alight with excitement, a tiny glowing insect cupped carefully in her hands. "Mama, Papa, look what I caught." "It's beautiful, little one," Gabriel said, his gaze softening as he admired the firefly. "Just like you." But the peaceful moment was shattered by a sharp, unfamiliar howl that echoed through the forest, closer than any of their pack. The playful atmosphere amongst the adults instantly shifted, a ripple of unease passing between them, their ears swiveling towards the sound. "What was that?" Mira murmured, her hand instinctively going to her belly, a flicker of concern clouding her hazel eyes. "That didn't sound like one of ours, Gabriel." Gabriel's amber eyes narrowed, his alpha senses immediately on high alert. He rose swiftly and silently, his protective instincts surging. "I don't know," he said, his voice low and wary. "Stay here, both of you." Before Mira could protest, he shifted, his magnificent white wolf form melting into the shadows of the surrounding trees. Mira watched him disappear, a sudden, icy grip of apprehension tightening around her heart. Sophie whimpered softly, her small hand clutching Mira's. "Papa," she asked, her silver blue eyes wide with a child's innocent fear. "He'll be back, sweetheart," Mira reassured her, though a knot of worry twisted in her stomach. Just stay close to Mama. The unfamiliar howling echoed again, this time closer, and Mira could now discern a note of distinct distress woven into its mournful cry. And then, carried on the night wind, a different sound reached them, a woman's voice, faint but undeniably human, laced with pain. "Help me, please, Silver. It burns." Mira's breath caught in her throat. Silver, the one true weakness of their kind. Her eyes widened, a sudden, chilling realization dawning within her as she looked down at the precious life growing within her womb.